Okay, so my name's Amari, and today we're going to talk about determination of gender and how genes and hormones play a role in sex determination. So first we're going to talk about chromosomes. And so in our body we have 22 pairs of chromosomes and 1 pair of sex chromosomes. And what chromosomes are it's where the genetic information lies in an organism. So again, we have 22 pairs and 1 pair of sex chromosomes. So of that 23, that gives us a total of 46. Half of those, because they're in pairs, so half of those come from the mother and half of them come from the father. And this is a completely random process. But when we talk about males have an XY chromosome. So an X chromosome comes from the mother and the Y chromosome comes from the father. And then when we talk about females, it's an XX pair. So we have 1 X from the mother and 1 X chromosome from the father. And so depending on the chromosomes, whether it's an XY or XX, that will develop gonads, internal genitalia, or external genitalia. So for example, in males, when we talk about gonads, those are what we call the testes, which produce sperm, or in females, female gonads are ovaries, which produce eggs. So here's a depiction of the chromosome. We talked about chromosomes. So if we look here for a female, we can see an XX pair. So here we have XX, which gives us a female, and then we have XY, which gives us a male. So now we can talk about the early stages of development when we talk about internal organs. So we're going to talk about the bipotential stage, which is the stage where internal reproductive organs have the potential to develop into male or female organs. So when we talk about that, we can talk about the medulla, which develops into testes. In males, outer cortex develops into ovarian tissues. In females, Wolffian ducts forms the epididymis, vas deferens, and seminal vesicle, and then Mullerian ducts, which becomes the fallopian tube, uterus, cervix, and upper half of the vagina. And so when we talk about development of these internal organs, the important thing to remember is that is the regression of some of these when we're talking about male or female. So again, if we go back, when we talk about the medulla, which develops into testes in males, that means that the medulla regresses in females. And when we talk about the outer cortex, this means that it regresses in males because this develops into ovarian tissue in females. And so as the growing embryo continues to the next stage, one set of ducts will diminish and the other will stay. So here is a continuation of when we talk about development of internal organs. So here's a depiction of that, of what we talked about the last slide. So we can use this image here on what would be our left, and we can see male-female differentiation. And we're going to get into hormones a little bit later, but we can see gonads here, Wolffian duct here in blue, and then Mullerian duct here in pinkish red color, or whatever you will. So if we talk about male, when there's a presence of male hormones, we can see that the epididymis is formed, as well as the testes, the vas deferens, and the seminal vesicle. And when there's an absence of those hormones, this is when we get development of female internal organs. So we can see the development of the ovary, uterus, and cervix, and then the upper half of the vagina will also develop. So now we talk about how genes and hormones aid in sex determination. And so there's something called an SRY gene, which is the sex determining region of the Y chromosome. And when there's a presence of this, we're talking about males. So the SRY gene directs male development. And the SRY gene produces TDF, which is the testes determining factor, and binds to DNA and it activates other genes. The SRY gene protein then directs gonadal medulla development into testes. Once differentiated into the testes, AMH, testosterone, and DHT are secreted to develop the internal and external male genitalia. So AMH is the anti-Müllerian hormone. It's a glycoprotein and secreted by Sertoli cells, which causes the Müllerian ducts to regress. And then we have androgens, which are testosterone and DHT. And testosterone in males converts the Wolffian ducts into male accessory structures like the epididymis, the vas deferens, and the seminal vesicle. And then we have DHT, which aids in the differentiation of the external male genitalia. So now we can see how genes and hormones play a role in sex determination when we talk about males. So when we talk about females, there's an absence of the SRY gene. The inner cortex of the bipotential gland develops into ovarian tissue. There's also an absence of AMH. And so with an absence of this, the Müllerian ducts will develop into the upper portion of the vagina, the uterus, and fallopian tubes. And then there's also an absence of the androgens that we talked about, which were DHT and testosterone. And so when there's an absence of this, the Wolffian ducts will degenerate and female external genitalia will develop. And so that's just a brief overview of how we determine sex and the development of the organs and how the hormones and genes aid in sex determination.